So you get the yes from someone. They say they're going to buy what you're offering, whether it's product or service. And then they start. They want more and more and more. They want the world from you for the price that you quoted them. We're going to talk about what that feels like, how to deal with it, and what it means on episode 827 of today's Antidote.
Stay tuned for today's Antidote, brought to you by the Renegade Success Network. Today's Antidote features a healthy dose of thought-provoking insights and information for business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and nonprofit professionals. Each day since March of 2020, this program has offered that one thing to help you continue on your own unique pathway to success. And now, Renegades, we bring you Bob Graham and Tom Brush.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Bob. How are you today?
I'm good. We are taping this. This is recorded from yesterday because I had a conflict this morning. So if you put comments, please feel free to put comments. However, we will not be responding in real time to them, but I promise Tom and I look over every comment and we will respond as soon as we see them.
Yes, we will. Thanks for the disclaimer, Bob.
That's what I do.
Are you trying to give them the world so they can have everything?
Quite the opposite. Setting realistic expectations.
So when they say yes to coming into listening or watching the show, that they know where they're at, not
yes.
What they think they're going to expect?
That's it. Correct.
Fair enough. All right, everybody, welcome. Good morning to today's Antidote, our daily broadcast and podcast, where each weekday morning, we share our thoughts and ideas around a topic. As Bob mentioned, the topic this week is getting a yes. Yesterday we talked a little about when you get a yes and then there's buyer's remorse. Monday we talked about when they get a yes, then they ghost you, they disappear. So if you missed those episodes, please go back and watch them, because I think you'll find some value in there, and it'll help set us up for our conversation today, where we're going to discuss when they want the world, even though they didn't pay for the world. Interesting. That's a great conversation, I think. And I think we all go through this as probably buyers and when we are the seller. So as we go through this conversation, as Bob mentioned, please share your thoughts and ideas, because someone watched this when it is shown may have value in what you have to say. Even though we're recording, we aren't going to be able to share to respond it in that way. Please check it out, because there's always great value that is provided by our viewers and listeners. And then at the end of the conversation, Bob and I will each offer our one thing, our today's antidote, that thing that we hope will help you figure out how to take your next step when you're struggling, frustrated, uncertain, and really not sure what to do next. And one of the best ways, if you're struggling to take your next step, is to just stay connected and engaged and watch the show. And if you're looking for more than that, reach out to Bob or I, because we might be able to, Bob and me, we might be able to help you figure out how to take that next step. If you're listening to the podcast, we know there's no place to comment, so please feel free to join us in our Ring of Renegades Facebook group. Before we dive into the conversation, though, each morning Bob and I share our celebrations. So, Bob, what are you sharing today?
I'm celebrating that you and I have been making some really great strides on things in the last couple of weeks. We've been working a lot in the background and really building some cool stuff. And at the same time, we're building the airplane while we fly it at times. We still do a lot of networking events. We do some coaching, we do some other stuff. So we put a lot of effort in the background to build some things. And it's been fun to work with you. Somehow we manage it. We both have busy things going on. There's a lot of competing interests, and somehow it works out without acrimony or frustration or screaming. I don't think we've screamed at each other yet.
Does that mean I should be prepared that you're going to scream at me at some point?
Could happen.
You did say yet. It makes me start to think that
I don't have a screaming thing prepared, but True to form, when I do scream, it usually comes out of nowhere.
Oh, that's nice to know. So I can be completely prepared for it.
Not. Moving on. What are you celebrating today, Tom?
I'm celebrating that I get to. Last week I did a presentation with a group of people who manage boards. And so tonight I get to do a presentation. Some of those same people will be there and members of their boards.
Nice.
So last week it was talking about how to, maybe differently look at how they manage their board. Today it's going to be about maybe how to be a more effective, maybe board member, and sort of handle some of the challenges that board members go through. One of the biggest being, please, I'll do anything except ask people for money. We're going to address that. So if you're part of a board that struggles with that, I'd be happy to talk with you more about how you can help your board members overcome that fear.
Well, it's also funny because a lot of people in business owners will say that.
Sure.
I want to build my widgets, or I want to do my service. I don't want to find customers. I don't want to ask people
to buy it.
I expect them to come to me. So it's a fairly common thing that you have to overcome to be successful.
And the solution is similar.
Yes.
You can do one with the other. So again, be happy to talk to you about that if you're struggling with that as well. So whether you're afraid of asking people for money or afraid of asking them to buy your thing, widget, service, product, I think Bob and I can have some help and help you figure out how to take your next step.
And we've all been there.
We have?
I've been there. Oh, yeah. I know that one firsthand. I don't know about you, but I've been there.
I feel like I've been doing it forever. And I'm sure I was there at once, considering that I was in the nonprofit space and asking people for money. Not if I only knew then what I know now.
Wisdom is wasted on youth, right?
I guess. I don't know. Although we gain that knowledge, experience, and perspective, which can.
But you had to learn it two different ways, right? You learned it in the nonprofit space, and then you had to reapply it to the business space. And it wasn't like you clicked a switch and you went to running your own business and you were asking people for the sale instantly. I mean, I remember some days where that was not as easy as you're making it sound today.
Well, I think that some of that knowledge, experience, perspective from that piece of it, and a little bit into my business, I started to realize that there was another way to do it. That made it that was different. So yes, of course. All right, shall we dive into the conversation?
Yeah, let's dive in.
I said it. Can I lead us off?
Please go ahead.
I like the introduction. And the first thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about this topic was the person who comes in and wants all the features, benefits, services that a Cadillac, BMW, let's go with that route. Cadillac is kind of the old.
A luxury vehicle.
A luxury vehicle, yet they can only afford to buy the less luxury, the economy model.
Yeah.
And yet they wanted to have all the bells and services and whistles that the luxury car has. And then they buy the car they can afford and then are frustrated because, well, it doesn't have this and it doesn't have that. And it doesn't, that's not what we're buying. So trying to help people, trying to deal with that, not only as the buyer and also to deal with it when you're the seller and someone comes back and says, hey, why doesn't this have X, Y, Z? Like, well, you could have gotten that if you had told on it and it was you were willing to pay for what was included in that. So I think that's a challenge that I think people have. And I almost wonder sometimes I think about it is if we set people up for that as the person who is selling. When we talk about all the benefits and services and make it sound like this absolutely amazing thing is going to solve every challenge that you have, and they get like, well, it doesn't solve every challenge. It solves some of them. And I think it's interesting then to figure out the balance of how do we promote what we have and all the amazing things that it will do without giving people a perception that it will do way more than even they're expecting it to do way more than it does.
Well, I think it's a two-way street. I think when we're selling, we talk about all the great features. And I think the person we're selling to is hearing what they want to hear. They're not looking at the nuances and going, oh, wait, if I buy the economy version, that feature's not in. They're hearing the big picture because they have a problem and we're offering them a solution. The solution in our minds is broken up into 3 different levels. They're not hearing that. They just want the problem solved. They don't know that they've asked us for, based on their financials or whatever, they don't know that, oh, you're solving problem A, but there's also problem A and B that I can solve for you, and A, B, and C. They just don't hear it that way because they just want to be out of the pain. They just want to feel better about whatever is in their way. So the person who wants to buy the car doesn't want to buy the economy car, even though they can afford it. They want the luxury car because then they can show their friends, look at this really cool Cadillac or BMW. They don't want to go around in a Pinto or a Versa or some little car because that's not the status they're looking for. And we don't do a very good job of saying, hey, look, I can tell you all the features of the Cadillac, but based on your situation, you're going to buy a Versa. So let me tell you what the Versa will and won't do. Because if you tell them what it won't do, they may not buy it. They may go somewhere else because it's not solving the deeper problem, which is they want a vehicle that's status. The other thing I'll tell you, Tom, is the person who wants the world, every time I've discounted my pricing, every single time, 13 years in business, the person I've discounted my services for has always been the person who's demanded the most, way beyond what would be reasonable. Absolutely every single time. And you who are out there who are watching and listening, you know who you are. And I don't discount anymore for that reason. And I think that's one of the things I had to learn. By discounting, go, okay, you know what? Sure, I'll do it at your price. I think that person thinks, okay, now I took advantage of that. I'm going to take more advantage. I'm going to take more advantage. And they're a person who calls you at 5 o'clock on Friday and expects you to do something right then and there versus the person who's paying the higher level pricing. And, you go, okay, you know what? For what this person is paying me and their commitment here, I'm willing to work from 5 to 6 on Friday. But if I've discounted my price and you're calling me at 5 o'clock Friday because you have a crisis, I'm not as willing. And I had to learn that the hard way. In the beginning, I discounted stuff a lot. I mean, my prices were, here's what I'm quoting you, and wait, let me, and in the real beginning, I was the one who was discounting. I'd be like, hey, this is my quoted price, but I know you can't afford that. So let me do half price. So I set myself up for them to want the world. Well, if he's going to give me a discount, you know what? I'm going to ask for everything. What have I got to lose? I can probably get it for free. If I really work hard, he'll pay me to do it.
That might be true. Well, I think it's interesting. I think the other piece of it is that, I just think, go back to the car example, is that you see the ads for the car and they show you might not even be like a real model. It's like a test model, or this is what we're trying to get it to do.
No, it's got to be a real model. They can't do that in advertising.
Wow. And then they write at the bottom, this is a showroom model, not available yet for sale.
But it will be.
But at some point, and they list the starting at, and then they do the very basic base model. And so in some ways, we're doing a little bit of switcheroo on them. It's like, oh, I can get this amazing car for starting at $16,000. Great. Let me go in and ask about it. Well, that's this model. The one you saw in the advertisement has this, and this, and it's $24,000. And you're like, I mean, I was saying yes at one point, and now I have to think a little bit.
You can get a Cadillac for $24,000, Tom. Let me tell you, buy it right now. Buy two and send me one. I'd be happy to write you a check for $24,000 to get that Cadillac.
Now maybe I have to go looking for one.
Model, not a Cadillac from like 15 years ago that was in a car crash.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. I'm glad you clarified that.
I felt the need to.
Well, I think that's it. I think sometimes we set people up to expect that they are going to get the world. Because in some ways we feel like they are. It's just their perception of the world is different than what our perception of the world is. The world for us might be like, yeah, we're going to transform whatever our widget or service is into going to help you transform where you are to where you want to be. And then you realize, well, maybe if they can do that, I can even push them to do this and this and this and more. And I think that that's where, how you set boundaries around what's truly included and what is not. And making sure that we're doing that before the sale rather than after we get the yes. And they're already having this expectation that they're going to get the world, even though that's not really what's going to happen.
And it's a fine line because one thing I see in myself is I get excited to solve a problem for someone.
Sure.
I like when my solution works for a person, and I tend to want to just tell them everything. And I have to really rein that in and really be like, okay, how much information do they need? What information do they need? And I've worked on that myself, and I've worked with other people on that, coached them around that, hey, this is a really big deal to you. It's not to them. I always use the example of, 1024-bit encryption. And I was working with a tech person, and they were like, oh, my solution does this, and it has 1024-bit encryption, which was at that time 4 times more than average. And I said, one, I don't know what that means. And 2, your solution, that's not what you're bringing up the issue of it's unsecure by raising that. Said, no, but it's really important. I worked really hard to build that feature. But it's not the feature people were buying. It was actually deterring them because I watched him talk to someone. And as soon as they brought that up, wait a second. So my information isn't secure? It's like, no, it's secure. But that's what he put in their head by bringing it up. And I think we do that a lot in how we have that discussion, that rather than helping steer a person towards what they can afford, what fits their situation, whatever it is, time constraints, financial constraints, attitudinal constraints, organizational constraints. There are a lot of constraints that you can bring into the equation. Recognizing those. What's that?
I like attitudinal. Is that a word?
It is.
Okay. Sorry, I got caught on that.
Okay. But those constraints are important to recognize as the seller because the buyer can't see those. They're just looking for a solution. We've spent more time on our solution, thinking about the problem and the solution, than the person who's looking for a solution. They've spent their time thinking about the problem.
Sure.
And so we often go in and be like, well, all these things. Well, no, you really don't. I don't. Educate me.
Well, and I think that's sometimes the other thing. I mean, I think as much as the, going back to your 1024-bit encryption, you're not talking about something that most people don't have any idea about what that means. So one, they're either thinking, well, wait a minute, it's not secure. Or right. 2, they're like, wait, now I got to figure out what that means. And I got to compare that to 512 or, maybe somebody else is going to come out with 2048. And now you've, again, caused another problem within when they thought they were solved, because now they don't completely understand it. And if we don't understand it, it's going to be hard for us to dive in and actually get the yes. Or we get the yes, and now you start telling about all these other things, and they're like, well, wait a minute. Now
my
I'm
head's spinning.
confused, and I need to know more. Or they're going to start asking all these other things that you have to say. So I think there's a balance between what we share, the expectations that we set up, and how they view those expectations, or what their expectations are. And I think, unless we're really clear on that, it can create a very confusing situation, awkward situation.
I think my one thing would be that those two need to mesh. A person's expectations and what I'm saying I can deliver to them, they have to be very closely aligned. If there's a difference, either way, it's going to lead to them either wanting the world or me feeling like this was a bad decision.
Right. I have to give more than I really should, because maybe I set them up to think that's what they were going to get.
Right. Or the other extreme. Well, this really isn't the person I want to work with, because my solution's just it's not enough for them, or it's too much for them. I thought they were here, but they were actually over here, and it just won't work. And I think it's hard to say that sometimes.
Sure, because I think you're trying to get them to understand the value that you have.
And make a sale.
Well, and that as well. And I think that's getting them to see the value and not overvaluing where you're at, I think is they think, well, if they can solve this and I already have them, maybe I can help them maybe they'll help me do this as well.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's not really in this program or in this widget. And it's something that we have to think about. How do we do that differently?
What's your one thing?
I think my one thing is about being really clear with yourself and with others of what the boundaries are that come along with whatever it is that they said yes to. And being clear about what that looks like, so that there is less confusion and there are less expectations that, that's why I find it interesting with some of the way some people promote their product or their service. And I wonder if they truly can deliver what they say, or are they setting people up to be disappointed when the delivery doesn't come through? And I think that's being really clear on those boundaries, or else people are going to want the world. Of course they are. They feel like they have bought something that's going to solve their problem, which likely they think is going to solve all their problems, all their challenges, or provide the pleasure that they think. If you say, hey, I want you to go, you're looking for a cruise and I'm going to put you on this amazing boat. And then they get on the boat and they want, well, how come it doesn't have this and that and the other thing? And why didn't they put me on a boat that did? And now they get frustrated with where they are at. And I think that's the last thing we want, right? Is we would want a buyer to feel like, maybe I didn't get exactly what I thought I was getting.
Tom, I got to say, all the aluminum cans that I've had in the last 20 years, my Ginsu has cut every single one of them. Remember the Ginsu ads where it showed you cutting an aluminum can?
And then being able to cut a tomato?
Yes. Yeah, right. Because that happens so often. Hey, can you cut a can in half for me and then slice a tomato for my sandwich?
It's such a fascinating, whoever came up with that is like, why would anybody want to, okay, it's great they can. All I care is, can it continually cut a tomato the way I want a tomato cut? Not
anyone who has a Ginsu out there, I'd love to hear from you. Is it still able to cut a can and cut a tomato? Because it's been probably 20 years. And for you young people, the Ginsu was a sharp knife that was like one of those TV purchases that if you bought it at like 11:30 p.m., right before TV went off and they played the Star Spangled Banner and faded to clouds. We're talking old school TV. You could buy 2 for 1.
Before there was
a lot of Ginsu ads
or Amazon.
And then there was the Flowbee. Remember the Flowbee? The buzz cut for your hair, and it had a vacuum, and it would vacuum up the hair as you went. Oh, come on.
I don't. The name sounds familiar. What it does, I'm not remembering that. Maybe because I was never a buzz cut kid, so I was like, didn't really pay that much attention.
Maybe.
I wasn't. I just said I wasn't.
Okay.
But others weren't.
You had those flowing locks.
Something like that. Something like that. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us today. Again, as a reminder that we record this, but we hope you will still continue to share your thoughts or your one thing, because we know that it'll add value to people who are watching or listening or happen to see it in their social media feed. So please share your value. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast, we know there's no place to comment. So we encourage you to join us inside our Ring of Renegades Facebook group, where we are providing value to help people figure out how to take their next step. And while you're in there, you may discover something that is of value to you that you may have been told before, but you haven't really heard it because you didn't hear it in the way that this person shared it. So please feel free to join us inside there. If not, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7 a.m.-ish Eastern time, for our next episode of Today's Antidote.
Hey, go out and embrace the renegading you on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. So worth it.
Yes. Go out and enjoy the day. And we'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to Today's Antidote, powered by the Renegade Success Network. The Renegade Success Network helps you confidently create your own unique pathway to success. To learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you can take your next step, follow us on Twitter, connect on LinkedIn, or join the Ring of Renegades Facebook group. For full details on how you can join our community, go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. Embrace the renegade in you.